So what are your thoughts on the Affordable Care Act?
I think that people have a lot of problems with it, and I think that they have valid issues with it. I think the biggest problem with health care is that everybody wants things black and white. Nothing in life is black and white. Repeal would mean that we throw away really important provisions that like access and affordability and accessibility, like doctors not being allowed to prescribe you medications because the pharmaceutical company is paying them to. There are a lot more provisions than just this pre-existing conditions thing and this 26-year-old provision and this lifetime caps provision. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's some really important things in there. Repeal would get rid of some really great things. That said, leaving it as it is almost crazier, because there are too many things about it that a lot of people have issues with. You know, I think I mentioned at one point the ratio between the least expensive care that's available and the most expensive care that's available, and how at 3-to-1 right now that means that there's really not much distance between the most expensive and the least expensive. There have been proposals to expand that to 5-to-1. I think that makes health care less expensive for some people, and maybe may get more people into the pool. I also don't think it's completely necessary that the government is telling everybody exactly what they have to cover. If you want a higher deductible and a lower copay, or lower copay, and it's different types of a little more a la carte menu, I don't see why that should be an issue. We should certainly not be telling people what they have to have covered. The motivation for the law should be to make sure everybody has access to health care, everybody can afford it, and it's available for people regardless of their conditions. And so anything outside of those things that can make it better, we've got to fix. And Democrats can't be sitting in the corner with their arms crossed saying, I don't want to fix anything. That's ridiculous. So we certainly, but at the same time, Republicans can't sit over in the other corner and say, I'm not going to fix anything, we're just going to throw it out. We've got to work together. The bottom line, folks, nothing gets done unless we come to the table and discuss ways to fix it. It's been implemented for quite a while now, and we've had plenty of time to carve out issues and fix problems, and we aren't doing it because nobody's talking to each other, and that's not acceptable.
What needs to happen with immigration?
That's an issue that I struggle with. I certainly do not believe. First of all, there are two things that I'm steadfastly of the opinion that, one, I believe the DREAM Act I am a strong supporter of the DREAM Act. Children who were brought here by their parents of no fault of their own, who've grown up in our schools, who we've educated, we should be putting into our workforce, and we should be, they should be fully functioning members of society. I also believe steadfastly that spending billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars to round up and deport everyone who's here illegally is not an option either. I mean, it's just not an option. Now, those folks who are here who would not be covered by the DREAM Act, we've got to figure out a way to bring them out of the shadows, because they're not being able to put into our economy if they're not able to work and not able to drive, they're not able to live here legally. I certainly think that there probably should be some sort of not retribution necessarily, but there needs to be some sort of deterrent to keep people from just continuing to come here illegally. The first thing has to be spending the energy and the resources to close the border and to seal our border. If we're not spending the resources to seal the border, then nothing we do is going to matter at all. Now, what the status is of those folks who are here illegally, when we allow them to stay, what that is and what it looks like, I think involves a much larger discussion. It's not something that any one person's going to come to is going to decide on their own. But children who would be covered by the DREAM Act should be covered, and adults who would not be covered by the DREAM Act are not going to be able. We're not going to be able to deport them all. So we have to. Again, it's another situation. We got to get to the table and come up with it. I may have certain issues that are on one side of the aisle and the other issues on the other side of the aisle. If we keep our arms crossed in the corners, we're not getting anywhere.
And finally, any thoughts on the deficit deficit? Anything?
The thoughts on the deficit. We spend a lot of money. We spend more money than we need to in a lot of areas. I think one of the ways to solve a lot of our deficit problems is not just to look for places to cut, but ways to spend smarter and better. I mean, if you look at the fact that we spend $25 billion a year on upkeep of federal buildings that are vacant or not used at all, this is an area where we should be more efficient and we should be smarter. There's a whole bunch of places like that as well. At the end of the day, running a deficit is not that much different than when you invest to send your kid to college. You take out a loan in order to do that, and that investment will pay off for you and your child in the future because they'll get a better job, hopefully. They'll get a higher paying job. And so deficits, I don't think, are always, we certainly can't be running them every year, but in times of national crisis, really, when we've had a recession, we certainly need to be able to take out loans to invest in the country, whether that be through infrastructure or through improving educational opportunities. But there are certainly ways that we can cut some of that spending and reduce some of that deficit by dealing with some inefficiencies and some wasteful stuff that we don't that is not going to necessarily be an investment in the country.